We tend to tell ourselves a comforting story about people who join cults or extremist groups, that they are gullible, uneducated, or psychologically frail. It reassures us that we are immune. But psychological capture is a slow, methodical process of professional grooming. Effective manipulation incrementally shifts a person's identity. By the time the process is complete, the belief system is so tied to the self that leaving feels like psychological death. This process exploits the psychological vacuum. Humans evolved an intense drive for tribal affiliation and belonging. We are wired to seek community to survive. Predatory groups target people who are currently without a social anchor. These transitional stages, like moving to a new city, losing a job, or experiencing a divorce, strip away our normal support networks, leaving us looking for a new set of values to latch onto. Waiting in that vacuum is often a charismatic leader exhibiting the dark triad of personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. These individuals are adept at reading vulnerabilities and presenting themselves as the ultimate solution. Charismatic leaders succeed by finding smart, capable people who are temporarily isolated. They provide a new home for the mind before the person realizes they've surrendered their autonomy. The capture of a mind begins with unfreezing. The goal is to break down a target's existing boundaries and defenses. To do this, the group subjects the new recruit to an overwhelming amount of attention and affection. This diagram shows what happens inside the brain during love bombing. The sudden influx of intense validation and praise floods the brain with dopamine, our primary reward chemical, and oxytocin, the hormone responsible for human bonding. The leader engages in narcissistic seduction, deliberately projecting extreme agreeableness and empathy. This tactic lowers the target's guard, making them feel uniquely heard and understood. With trust established, the group uses the foot in the door technique. They start with small, harmless agreements. Once a pattern of compliance is set, the requests slowly scale up in importance and impracticality, gradually eroding the recruit's sense of what is normal. This initial honeymoon phase creates a powerful illusion. The leader and the group appear to be the flawless answer to every problem the recruit was facing before they walked through the door. Indoctrination then enters the changing phase. Cult expert Stephen Hassan outlines this process using the BITE model: behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. It begins by restricting physical reality. Dictating associations, diet, and sleep schedules physically exhausts the member, instilling absolute obedience and dependency. Here we see how information control isolates the mind. The group minimizes or forbids access to non-cult media, outside friends, or critics. They keep members constantly busy with group-generated propaganda, ensuring all incoming data filters directly through the leadership. By monopolizing exactly what a person does and exactly what they know, the leader builds a closed biological terrarium. Without external feedback to test reality against, independent judgment becomes functionally impossible. Then the environment violently shifts. The leader drops the idealization and begins a phase of devaluation, introducing unpredictable bouts of rage, humiliation, and psychological abuse. This graph illustrates intermittent reinforcement. Sudden abuse floods the nervous system with stress hormones like cortisol. Then, the leader randomly reinstates their affection, triggering a massive spike of dopamine. This volatile cycle biologically addicts the follower to the leader, forging a deep trauma bond. To enforce this bond, the group applies thought and emotional control. Critical thinking is shut down through repetitive rituals. Complex issues are reduced to loaded language. Finally, exits are sealed through phobia indoctrination, installing irrational fears that leaving will result in catastrophic consequences. Over time, the brain's baseline neurochemistry shifts to accommodate this cycle. It stops responding to the quiet safety of normal life and begins to compulsively crave the intense neurochemical spikes of the coercive environment. Sociologist Yanja Lalich describes this state as bounded choice. The followers are still making decisions, and those decisions feel completely rational to them, but they are operating within a manufactured, restrictive reality where the only logical choice is obedience. The unfreezing process is complete. The target is now refrozen with an artificial pseudo-identity that sits on top of their original personality, dissociating them from their former character, feelings, and motives. In this state, the recruit becomes deployable. As the group's map of reality replaces their own, actions that once violated their personal ethics are reframed as necessary steps towards purity, performed at the leader's command. The physical results of this total cognitive capture can be devastating. When followers are entirely insulated from outside reality and conditioned to view their leader's commands as absolute law, they will execute those commands to the very end. Because indoctrination relies on a mechanical process, it leaves a trail of early warning signs. Recognizing the intensity of love bombing, the push for isolation, and the narrowing of language allows us to spot the architecture of control before the person inside is lost.